one day I went out and I just again, you know, I go through a lot of this lamenting. I don't do it so much anymore. But I was feeling so sad, and I went out into this dark parking lot. I would go find church parking lots and just park there because I didn't want to purge around the kids and all that. I had nothing to do with them. So I would go find a nice place. And it's when you live with a family, there's not a lot of places where you can just go and talk and cry and do what you need to do. So I was in this parking lot, and I just said, you know, I really need a sign. I just need to know that you're with me and you're listening to me and that you haven't forgotten me or lost my file, or, you know, I need to hear something from you. So it was the very next day, that it was the very first time that a butterfly landed in my hand twice. And he landed this way and flew across the yard and then landed in the second one. And I go, okay, that was pretty good.
That's pretty cool. I'll take that.
Yeah. I'd rather have like a whole dictation and a conversation, but I'll go with the butterfly. So ask for signals, and ask for them to be very clear and easy and tangible for you. They usually always will be, but it just feels satisfying to ask, you know, like for our clarification, so that we know that we at least requested it.
Like, speak to me in ways that I can understand.
Right, speak to me in ways I can understand. And you know, it always will, because of course it knows more about you than you do. But it makes us feel better that we said that. Because it is wholly loving, your higher mind will never intrude, invade, force, manipulate, or dominate your thinking. If you would like for it to assist you in remembering the truth of who you are, it must be invited, and it will eagerly respond to your slightest invitation. The information in this handbook will help you remember how to access your divine consciousness, so that you can get on with enjoying your inherent birthright to joy, peace, happiness, health, and abundance. I encourage you to carry this handbook with you and practice the steps frequently until your mind is so filled with peace that you have no interest in fear-based thinking of any kind. Let's set the intention right now for your freedom from lack, worry, and fear, beginning with this prayer. There's prayers all throughout this book. I use the word God, and whatever word you use, you just put it right there. You know, maybe it's higher consciousness, divine love, universal support, whatever you want to call that divine intelligence. Please feel free to plug that in so that it feels comfortable for you. And here I have, dear God, I am willing to see myself and my life differently. I call upon you, the highest and wisest part of my mind, to guide me back to peace. I will not decide against you. I want to remember the truth of who I am, so I can get back to my natural state of happiness and abundance that is your will for me. If there is any place in my mind where I am aligning with or consenting to lack, deprivation, suffering, or sacrifice, please heal those thoughts for me. Thank you in advance that it is done. Amen. So why is it, do you think, in this prayer that we're asking for our thoughts to be healed instead of our bank account?
Because that's the cause.
That's the cause, right? So we want to be really clear about where the cause is. You know, I would say most of the world does prayers of supplication. All prayer is wonderful, beautiful, and blessed, because it always brings you into communion with your divine intelligence, that being God or the higher mind. So all prayer is divine, you know, so you can't go wrong. Anytime you pray, you're on the right track, right? So, but if we want to really quicken our pace a bit, if we're praying for something, like if I imagine right now that I was being bitten by a dog, and I was really screaming in terror and very, very upset, and I was calling upon each of you to help me, save me from this dog, what can you do? What can you do? Say I'm asleep and I'm having a nightmare, but I'm a little bit awake, and I'm aware that you're here, but I'm still having this terrible nightmare. What can you do to help me?
Wake me up.
Right, wake me up. Can you do anything about my dog? I made him up, didn't I? I mean, I made him up, and I'm experiencing him as if he is real. So when we call upon God and say, please get this, you know, dog off my leg, well, it's like, you're safe. Wake up. It's okay. You're okay. So what happens is we end up trying to pray that it's called our illusions, they don't feel like illusions, do they? You know, when we're experiencing them, they don't feel anything like an illusion. But when we're asleep at night, those don't feel like illusions, right? You could wake up the next morning and if a friend of yours slashed all your tires, I mean, you could wake up the next morning pretty irritated, like, why did they do that to me? And you think, well, it was a dream, but you almost want to call them up and say, why did you do that? Because it can feel so real. So our nighttime dreams, our nightmares can feel very real, much like this can feel very real. And one thing that we're learning is that there's, as we go through this journey together, that what we're experiencing now, that we will continue on in our awakened mind, in our evolution of consciousness, and we will even move beyond this experience, and we'll look back on this experience and go, oh, that, you know, that was kind of like that was an illusion. Because once we wake up to the truth, and some people have those ecstatic experiences. Have you ever had one? Anybody ever had an ecstatic experience where you maybe for a moment got a little glimpse of what's behind the curtain? You have?
I've had a little feeling of it.
A little Marta, yeah, a little bit from Marta. When it happens, and it will, when it happens, there's like no doubt in your mind that this is what's temporary. It is so certain and so all-knowing and so all-encompassing and so warm and so loving and so sweet, and there is nothing missing. And all of a sudden, when you start, and you don't even, at least for myself, within the span of about 10 minutes, and I wasn't even in meditation, but what I did is I had a moment where I was willing to forgive myself completely. I must have, because that's what I was thinking about when this occurred, and I forgave myself completely. And so I let go of all the guilt, and all of a sudden I went into what you would call an ecstatic state. It was just 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, not that I remember. And I was sitting there, and I went into this place, and in that span of, I would say, 10 minutes, because Terry was sitting, my husband was sitting across from me, and all of a sudden I was in this space, and as soon as I got there, I had no awareness that my name was Robin, that I was a human, that I was sitting in my kitchen. All of that was gone. It was like a fleeting thought. You know when you wake up from a dream and like all that just leaves? But all I had was this awareness of oneness with everything and everyone. I was aware of my husband across the table, but there was no table, but just him as a presence. And there he was, and it was in that moment that all of this, it just gone. You know, in the Course in Miracles tells us that when we actually wake up to the truth of who we are, that literally this is like a fleeting thought, much like a dream that we wake up from. And so we end up having these experiences here, and you go, well, yeah, but, you know, I like my life, or I like my dog, or I like my, you know, my job. I don't want it to just poof into thin air. So there's good news about that. Because as we go from a fear-based mind into an awakened mind, what ends up happening first is you kind of experience the happy dream. Happy dreams are happy, right? So you have kind of a happy dream, like all the positive things start happening in your life. So it's okay. You know, the good news is that you're going to get to experience at some point all of the great and wonderful things that you've always wanted to. And as we move out of our fear-based mind, that's what starts bringing it on. So everything you've ever wanted, needed, desired, hoped for, you know, all those things are still going to happen before this awakening, this grand awakening, such that there is no separation and there is nothing outside of yourself. So don't think you're, you know, by practicing these principles. I had someone in a class say one time, well, that's boring. You know, if I wake up, then that means, you know, I just turn into the light and blah, blah, blah. You know, like, so the ego came through and was trying to get into the room. And but if you think about it, you know, that's something that we can let that go and know that the journey towards that within our own being is filled with blessings, is filled with wonderful experiences, and it just gets better. So it's like we won't knock it till we've tried it, this idea of oneness and bliss and harmony beyond anything we've ever imagined. The Course says that it's 1,000 times greater than the most joyful thought you've ever had. So it's not so bad, you know, this whole oneness thing.
Doesn't sound very boring.
That's right, doesn't sound very boring.